The New York Yankees might have a massive problem in their outfield, and today we're going to talk about how they might be able to fix it, because center field is a position where the Yankees are going to end up having a below-average defender if they don't make a shakeup from what looks like the only two plans that most Yankee fans have in their minds for what the Yankees will do in the outfield. It's a Bellinger and Tucker debate, but that completely ignores the elephant in the room, and it's that they are not going to provide the Yankees with a strong enough defensive outfield that I think the Yankees would be comfortable rolling into the season with Bellinger in center field or Tucker in left field without a strong defensive center fielder, and in Bellinger's case, putting him in center field without either A, strong defensive left fielder, or B, just not sliding him over to left field and bringing in a center fielder. We're going to talk about all of that and more right here on Fireside Yankees. Before we do that, though, we strongly urge that you guys like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. Just pressing that like button, pressing that subscribe button, you join the Fireside family. It helps this video get further into the algorithm. It's a great way of showing your support for this page and what we do. A large percentage of our viewers are not subscribed, so if you're watching this, just double check that you're subscribed and join the Fireside family. Again, leave a comment in the comment section below telling me what you guys think about the Yankees outfield situation and what you would do to address it. But without further ado, let's just get into today's video. Now, we're going to do a little bit of reporting here in terms of some information I got throughout the trade deadline and early on in this offseason. It's important to note that the Yankees have not had the kinds of meetings or drawn their conclusions from the meetings that they've had internally to decide whether the Yankees are all in on one guy or all in on another, but we can take inklings from their trade deadline actions and try and look at where things go from there. Now, Francis Romero was the first to report during the trade deadline that the Yankees had expressed interest in outfielder Luis Robert Jr., and from my understanding and what I've learned here from Empire Sports Media, it's that the Yankees are a team that they do like Luis Robert Jr. They believe he's a good ball player. That is definitely a player I expect them to consider throughout the offseason. I'd also like to note when it comes to Luis Robert conversation, the public reporting is that he is expected to have his club option picked up. I do not have anyone that I know in the White Sox organization who could tell me differently or just talk to in general, so I'm not going to speak on that reporting. I will just say that it's been publicly reported that his option for next year, which is valued at $20 million, will be picked up. So that's not me reporting it. That's not me stating that that's going to happen. That's me stating that that's what's publicly out there. Now, let's kind of dig deeper into this Luis Robert conversation. The Yankees, from my understanding, are not a team that's 100% comfortable putting Cody Bellinger in center field without a good defensive left fielder, or putting Cody Bellinger in center field when they could just put him in left field. And obviously, with Kyle Tucker, there are some defensive concerns. He has been a good defensive outfielder throughout his career, but left field comes with concerns in general. The Yankees do view left field defense as very important, and I believe they're going to have some skepticism with Kyle Tucker's ability to play left field. Now, it's not that they won't put Cody Bellinger in center field and won't re-sign him, or that they won't go after Kyle Tucker, but that these are two thoughts that are definitely in their heads right now and is going to be part of their offseason equation. Now, Jason Dominguez factors into all of this because I never got the understanding during the deadline that Jason Dominguez was a player whom the Yankees viewed as a key part of their core and somebody that they need to keep moving forward. He is someone who I viewed as a player the Yankees were willing to move off of to acquire better players, whether that be acquiring an outfielder, trading him in a deal to get an impact piece back. Jason Dominguez has certainly been available in trade talks over the last 365 days, and so I'm under the belief that Jason Dominguez being traded is not a given, but it's certainly not off the table. It is something that's far more realistic than I think people give it credit for. Now, as it all pertains to Luis Robert Jr., he is an excellent defensive center fielder. Over the last 3 seasons, he has been worth 20 outs above average and 18 fielding run value. He has posted 8 defensive runs saved, and he is someone who's got the range and the motion and the speed and all of the kind of raw tools you need to be a really quality defensive center fielder. Throughout his career, has been graded out as an above-average center fielder, and he's a really, really good base runner as well because he steals a ton of bases. This past year, he swiped over 30 bases. He was only caught 8 times. I believe the exact number was 33. That gave him plus 1.7 base running value. I think the Yankees could extrapolate a ton of base running value from Robert on the bases as an excellent dynamic runner who moves around the bases really well, who has tons of speed. Now, the game power has really regressed in the last few years, and that is definitely an area of some concern, but the raw power hasn't really taken a hit in that time span. If you compare his 2023 and 2025 seasons in terms of batted ball profile, average exit velocity, and barrel percentage, there is a dramatic drop-off in barrel percentage from 15.2% to 10.1%, but I don't think that requires a drop-off, or that constitutes a drop-off from a 542 slugging percentage to a 364. His expected slugging percentage was well over 400. In fact, his expected numbers suggested he should have been a firmly above average hitter on the season. And against lefties, he hasn't lost his touch at all. He has remained a brilliant hitter against left-handed pitching throughout all the ups and downs of his career. This past season, he hit 258 with an 842 OPS against lefties. In his career, he has an 872 OPS and a 293 average with a 505 slugging percentage. It's pretty interesting that Robert walked more and struck out less than he did last year, but ended up with similar results. I think that's just a product of some piss poor luck in that regard. He is usually someone who has a pretty good batting average on balls in play because he's fast, hits the ball on the line pretty well, and doesn't hit a lot of ground balls, but he does hit the ball really hard. So when you're hitting the ball hard, you're hitting it on the line, you're generating a lot of good batted balls for picking up base hits. This is usually a guy who's hitting 250, 260, 270, 280, somewhere in that range. But the last 2 years, we've seen that drop off in batting average. I think the White Sox are a poor organization in terms of player development, and I think that plays a role in Robert's drop off, and that if you put him in a better organization, he would end up performing better. The Mets definitely viewed him as a very valuable player. The Mets desperately wanted him at the deadline. I'd be stunned if they don't revisit it at this year's offseason. And as I mentioned with Sandy Alcantara, if the Mets are in, they're going to have more assets to provide in terms of trade capital, and I imagine they're going to have a little more financial flexibility to go out and acquire a center fielder, not because their payroll's lower, but because I believe they view center field and Luis Robert as their number one guy for that position, whereas for the Yankees, Cody Bellinger and or Kyle Tucker might be higher on their priority boards than a Luis Robert. So that is the only reason why I'm not sure where the Yankees would stand in terms of likelihood to acquire Robert relative to other teams. But I imagine they would be in because they were somewhat in at the deadline, and they like the player. And when you like the player, you usually try and acquire them when they become available, even if it's a failed pursuit. Furthermore, I'd like to add on the Yankees' note of interest in Luis Robert Jr. If they were to bring him in and keep Jason Dominguez, it is very easy to split up that playing time. Stan's going to miss time. You could put Jason in against righties and Robert in against lefties. Bellinger would play center field not every single day. He'd still get reps in left field. You'd end up in a similar situation as last year where he spent a good chunk of time in center, but he also spent a good chunk of time in left. He actually was the starting center fielder for the Yankees, if you guys believe it or not. He was the starter in center field before Trent Grisham forced their hand and made him a left fielder because Grisham was so good offensively in 2025. Let's talk a little bit about Steven Kwan. Now, I understand that fans are going to look at this portion of the video and go, that makes no sense. He is a left fielder. That is his primary position. He has barely played center field in his major league career. Well, Kwan is someone who the New York Mets had a ton of interest in acquiring at this year's trade deadline, and with Nimmo in left field and Soto in right field, the game plan was to put Steven Kwan in center field, believing he could play there just like they put Jeff McNeil out there, provide enough defense where he wasn't a complete liability, and provide offense to a degree that he would make up the value. He would be a solid defensive center fielder who runs the bases well and provides above average offensive value, giving them some contact, giving them some on-base capabilities. That ultimately didn't fall through. The Dodgers were probably the team that were the most aggressive in their pursuit, and they would have played Kwan in left field, but I do think it's interesting. Steven Kwan is a trade candidate. He is someone who could get traded this winter. He is someone who may not sign an extension with Cleveland. They may look to trade him. And if the Mets considered it, I wonder if the Yankees would consider it. If Kwan was to play center field, I want to reiterate that he would not be a great defensive center fielder. I think he'd be a solid one, a decent one, a fine center fielder. And the way that I would imagine this is that, like the Grisham-Bellinger configuration, you would view Kwan as capable of playing center field, good jumps, good routes, not going to flag down baseballs at the rate that a Pete Crow Armstrong or a Cedon Rafaela, who has incredible athleticism and speed, could, but the great instincts out there would allow him to play the position for the next few years. Then you move Aaron Judge to DH, you put Bellinger or Kwan in right field, you put the other in left field, and then you have a center fielder somehow come up through the organization or you acquire one. I'm not really sure what that would look like. The issues with this are, number one, Steven Kwan is going to require a hefty trade package, and he just finished a year where he was actually a below-average hitter. He was a 99 WRC plus hitter. That is virtually league average, but it's 1% worse than average. So he's not a great hitter. He's not a phenomenal hitter. He's just got really good bat to ball. And I think people are going to conflate really good bat to ball and a solid batting average with someone who is an elite hitter. His career OPS is 741. His career average is 281. I know 280 is the new 300, but I don't think the Yankees need to desperately chase batting average to the extent where they're depleting their entire farm system to acquire a player who I think would hit for more power here, but certainly is a question mark to be a consistent hitter. In his 4 seasons, 2 of them have been above average offensive seasons. The other 2 have been below average offensive seasons if you look at OPS. So those are concerns from my end. I do think that if you were to have Kwan and Bellinger playing left and Kwan playing center, that you would have a baseball team that is really darn good defensively and pretty darn good offensively. You do have to bring in righties because you're going to need a righty to play for Kwan in certain left-handed situations or at least be a pinch hitting guy. He's had 1 year where he's been an above average hitter in those situations. Every other year he's been firmly below average offensively against lefties. So that does factor into this as well. I am lukewarm on the idea. I'm not really a big fan of the idea of taking Steven Kwan and taking one of his biggest strengths, which is his left field defense, and eliminating it. Now, finally, I do want to mention someone that I think, I'm not sure if they're going to get traded, but I think is a name to at least look out for, and that's Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh this past season remained an above-average hitter. He is a platoon guy. He can only really play against righties. You don't want to play him against lefties. He's more of a corner outfielder than a center fielder, but in the same vein that Kwan is someone who you could temporarily stick out in center and keep Bellinger in left field for it, I think Marsh is definitely capable of doing that as well. Marsh is a pretty good hitter. I think he's really good against righties and not good against lefties. He'll provide you some power. He'll steal some bases. He'll hit for a decent enough average and get on base at a solid enough clip. There are some real whiff issues, but he's corrected some of those throughout the years. I do wonder if the the Phillies would even consider trading Marsh, considering that they need to bring in a DH or an outfielder, or maybe 2 types of that. Maybe they need to bring in 2 outfielders or bring in an outfielder and a DH, whatever it may be. Maybe that's just reuniting with Bader and Schwarber. Maybe that's bringing in Kyle Tucker. Maybe that's bringing in Kyle Tucker and Harrison Bader. I don't really know, but they need to bring in 2 outfield/DH types. I'm not sure that they're going to get better by improving or get better by exporting one of their players, not importing a player onto their roster. Nick Castellanos is someone they're probably going to cut or trade. I know that they had interest in trading him at this year's deadline, and the Phillies came pretty close to making a deal with an AL Central team, I believe it was, for Castellanos, but that ended up falling through. So we'll see how things kind of sort out throughout the next few weeks. But Spencer Jones, I know, is kind of the final option to talk about, and personally, I think Spencer Jones is a really good defensive center fielder who has the base running chops, and if you told me he's going to come up and be a glove-first guy and that's the value you get out of him and he's a good enough hitter where he's not going to embarrass himself offensively, that's better than what you have for most options externally. But I don't believe that the New York Yankees are going to do that. I don't believe they're going to put Spencer Jones as their starting center fielder, and I think it would be completely foolish to start him in center field and not have any options to replace him if he were to not play well. That's very similar to what they did with Volpe in 2023, but that team didn't make the playoffs. Had that team made the playoffs, that would have been a much bigger story. And I'll be honest with you guys, if Volpe maybe had a little more time to develop, had a better guy to compete with him in 23, maybe he gets the development, makes the final adjustments he needs to be a big leaguer, and maybe his career turns out a little bit differently. So I do think it's important that we do not just hand the job to Spencer Jones. That would be a disaster. I think you'd need injuries for that to happen versus intentionally creating your roster so that that does happen, and that's your best case scenario. So I'm going to rule that out of being a realistic option for the Yankees. Same way I'd rule out Kwan and maybe even Marsh. I think Robert's their most realistic option. I'd also rule out a reunion with Bader. That's not a sourced thing. That's just I think he's going to get a multi-year deal, and I'm not sure the Yankees are interested in that. I know he's not going to come with a qualifying offer, but there's that. Again, I'd like to get your guys' perspective in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think about what's going on with the center field position. Spencer Jones, Luis Robert, Steven Kwan, Brandon Marsh, etc., etc. What would you do to solve the center field problem? Again, let me know in the comment section below. You guys can check out Fireside Yankees on YouTube. You can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You guys can also check out our audio, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcast. Our longer form stuff is on there. This stuff's more YouTube exclusive. And I'd finally like to point out EmpireSportsMedia.com. That's where we have our written coverage for the New York Yankees and all of your favorite New York sports teams. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. YouTube recommends you watch this video up here, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.